Bagel, you did very good, buddy. I'm glad you're enjoying chewing on this Nyla bone. This is Bagel. The other two dogs are in the kennel. You probably hear them as we're talking in this video. If you're whimpering or barking or howling, that's the Beagles. We're going to let them out here in a sec, but this is the end of the session. This is their roadmap to success. So in my estimation, these dogs, the reason for the misbehaving, the dogs actually went after one of the guardians when she tried to break up a fight, and I think there was just really friendly fire. But one of the dogs dominates another dog. This dog, Bagel, just moved in a week ago. Since he's moved in, one of the dogs is trying, we're having some other things that are going on. So essentially territorial pissings, for lack of a better word. So the dogs had no rules. They were petted on demand or when they whimpered or whined for them, and didn't have really any structure and probably a little under-exercised. And so that's what I call the perfect storm. The dogs didn't have any motivation to listen to the humans. The humans weren't acting like leaders as far as the dogs were concerned. And because dogs go through repetition, consistency, and good timing, it's really important that we have rules because we can't have good timing unless it's based on something. So, and you can have dogs with no rules, but typically you have multiple dogs together, especially in a blended house, which is kind of essentially what this is with Bagel here. Come here, buddy. We need you on the camera, on the footage. Come here. The more rules and structure you provide, the easier it is for the dogs to kind of get along with each other and respect the humans. So one of the things we just did at the end of the session, I went through a focus exercise. If you can't remember how to do the focus exercise, message me and I can share you a video that'll explain how to do the focus exercise. The key, based on the family, was to make sure that they don't, that they raise the treat to the nose and then go here, not going this way. And make sure we're saying the word focus after it goes in their mouth. Now when we're doing this, we need to make sure that we do it in gradual levels of intensity or difficulty. So we're going to start in the room with quiet, when nobody's eating, there's no other distractions, the other dogs are away. And we're going to go through about 12 treats each time. Then then eventually, at first it's 1 second, 1 second. Eventually it's going to be 1 second, 20 seconds. But you're going to get there step by step by 1 second at a time. And let me know if you can't remember and I can share the video for you. Or you can go to dogdownproblems.com and look for a write-up that has the focus exercise in the middle video of one of the write-ups. Okay, so teaching dogs to focus teaches them to look to the humans for guidance and to solve problems. You can come on back. It also teaches the dogs, it's a strong way to redirect them. The Beagles are very reactive to other dogs and they'll walk one more than the other. And so if we can give them a strong focus exercise technique, command, and then and work up to it on a walk, we can actually be walking with the dog and say focus, and the dog looks up at us as we're walking, we're going like this, and instead of looking at the dog over there and barking, they're looking up at us to get the treat. Okay, so we started off by going over rules and structure. The more that the guardians enforce the rules consistently and with good timing, the more the dogs will start to see them as authority figures. Now, we're not going to do it aggressively or punitively. We're just going to make sure that they don't do whatever it is, preferably by warning them before they don't do it. Some of the rules we suggested were not being allowed on the furniture for at least 30 days or as long as these problems are going. Because the higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. And I can very easily see Snoopy sitting up here and Duke walking by, and Duke walks too close and Snoopy goes after him or growls him because, hey man, don't you even think about coming and taking the status that I have up here. So by taking away all the status, the dogs all see themselves as peers on this level and the humans all being up here. At the end of the 30-day period, if we want to invite the dog up, we make the decision, we invite the dog with our permission, and it's a privilege and it's for good behavior. So if I invite the dog up and it starts barking, it has to get down. Or if I invite it up and it gets down to go to drink water, when it comes back, it would need permission to get back up on the furniture again. Now, if the dog gets up on the furniture, what I like to do is take a treat, touch the dog's nose with it, and throw it on the ground. When the dog jumps down to get the treat, then I would say the word off, creating basically a directional command word. And now we're giving the dog incentive to get off the furniture. Now, for the beds, if the dogs sleep with us on the bed, hey, buddy, we want to make sure that they have permission before they get on the bed instead of jumping up on their own. Also, climbing on top of us. Now, he's a puppy, so I don't mind it so much when he does it. But if a dog just literally climbs up, I'm actually inviting him now. But if a dog just climbs up on you, it's usually a good indicator that it does not respect you as an authority figure. Okay, so rule number 1, not being allowed on the furniture. Rule number 2, you have to sit before you go in or out of the door. Off. So again, I enticed him. You could use a treat or a bone or whatever it is. And then when he did the thing that I wanted, I rewarded him. And I just said off. I didn't say good dog or good boy or his name, just the word off. Okay, let me see. Other rule. So for the door, I tell him to sit once. If he doesn't sit, then I walk away if he doesn't sit within about 2 or 3 seconds. Then I wait 1 minute, then I go back to the door, and I tell him to sit as a command. Again, only once. If he doesn't sit, then I walk away this time for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, 8 minutes, etc. To keep doubling the length of time. As soon as he sits, when you tell him to, you open the door like there's remote control in his butt. And then he gets to go outside. Start with whatever direction he really wants, and then eventually do it on both directions. And eventually the dog will go sit at the door to ask for permission to go out. Now we have 3 dogs living in the house. I would recommend practicing this with the dogs one at a time with the other 2 dogs away to help make it easy for them to understand. And eventually once they all understand, if I go to the door and I say sit, and Bagel's the only dog that sits, and I open the door and let him out, I don't let the other 2 dogs out. So this way I'm controlling the resource, and this is a great way of training your dogs without actually giving them treats, because you're putting the reward as something that they want after they do something for you to earn it. And this will help make the dog earn it, will help with their self-esteem, something I think these dogs can benefit. Not necessarily him, he's a puppy, he seems good. Okay, so another rule would be not being allowed to be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating. That's a direct way of challenging in the dog world. That's my thumb, buddy. There you go. Not being allowed in the kitchen when somebody's eating food in the kitchen. Now, I went through showing the guardians how to do directional commands. What I would do is get 2 treats for every room. If I want to teach the dog to go out of this room into that room, I would stand right in this side of the room in the doorway. I touch the dog's nose with my treat, and I throw it about 3 feet inside the room. The dog would get up and go get it. As soon as it licks it up, remember, always give the treat first and say the command after, right after. So as soon as he licks it up, we say the word out. And then he's going to come back to us, we repeat it. Maybe twice there. Then we go to every bedroom and every room in the house. We practice out 2 or 3 times. And he gets a treat each time. So the dog is motivated and wants to go out of the room when we ask him to, rather than looking at it as a punishment, because for dogs, being excluded from the group is a punishment. Yes, you're such a handsome boy. Okay, let me see rules. Also, structure is really important. One of the guardians was a little frustrated. She's like, I feel like I can't pet my dogs. You can pet your dog as much as you want. You just have to earn it first. So we're going to make sure that the dog... He's a yelper, or he's a nibbler. So anytime his teeth touch you, and this is really exclusive, and this is really a puppy problem, then just yelp. I usually yelp like a little girl. That was too basic a yelp. If he does it again, I'll do it for you. That still wasn't as good as I'd like to do. And I pause for a second, then I can go back to petting him. It just teaches him, as soon as my teeth touch the human, they lose interest in petting me. And stopping when your dog does the wrong thing rather than correcting or punishing them is much, much more effective. Okay, so for structure, we're going to start petting with a purpose. So if the dog nudges me or scratches me or barks at me and I pet him, then the dog can tell me what to do and I listen. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the dog to do something first. Sit. I use this hand motion. Sit. And I like to pet under the chin. And then I'm going to say just the word sit. If he lays down, down. I don't know what his word is. But basically, just we're saying the command word after the dog does the action to connect it in the reward stage. Now, if I give a dog a command, I would say it twice. Sit. And then when a dog sits, I pet it and say sit. Down. And then I pet it when it goes down. So that way I'm putting it in context for the dog. So from now on, I would like the guardian to only pet the dog after he does something to earn it. So, for petting with a purpose, I back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the dog nudges me. I say sit, sit, sit. And I'm just going to say sit. And then I can pet him for an hour if I want, as long as I want. Unless the dog comes up and prepays. If he comes up and sits in front of you, then pet him and acknowledge that he's doing something you want, and then reward him for doing it as well. Now this leads me, and also remember to say the word paycheck. So if you come in the room, you see somebody's petting the dog who's standing, you say paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tells the dog to sit, and we pet him on the chin as soon as they do sit, and we tell the person, I did it, you just weren't here for it. Other watchwords we want to use is reward. If I point at you and say reward, that means the dog just did something that we should be rewarding for the subject I'm about to talk to you about, passive training. So if you say reward, you just want to reach over and pet the dog. Passive training is simply waiting. That's a cute picture if I had my camera. Passive training is simply recognizing and rewarding the dog every time it engages in desired actions and behaviors. So every time your dog comes to you, even if it's just walking by, pet it and say come. Every time it sits down next to you, pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash or chill or whatever your word is. The more that we reward the dog for the desired behaviors, the more the dogs are going to want to do those things in the future. And right now, we're just waiting for the dog to do it on their own. And that makes it easy. And then eventually we give the command and the dog comes to us expecting to get the same reward. So that's petting with a purpose and passive training. If you get in a habit of doing both of those things, every time you pet your dog, it's a training session without even thinking about it. So truly put an emphasis on trying to do that. Also, the Guardians did what a lot of people do is they have a number of command words for every command action. Come here, over here boy, whistle, tap my thigh, dog name, dog nickname. Now the dog has to listen for 70 words as opposed to listening to just 10 words or however many commands they have. Yes, you're awfully cute and rambunctious. Okay, so maybe come up with reward or vocabulary, whatever the word is you want to do for that. And then let me see, repeat or rerun. The more we say a command, the less we mean it. And we will desensitize and we will train the dog to ignore that command word. So from now on, only give the command word once and then make it happen or walk away or give the dog motivation to do it. I try to arrange a situation where the dog has to do what I want, but it's the only option. And then I get to reward it and assign it a command word. And I do that enough, and eventually the dog does that same thing to get that reward. And then I add an option B. There's like I said, I'm not going to do option A. B, option A gets me the reward. And then we gradually work ourselves up back to a real world situation, and the dog's happy to do what we want them to do, the benefit of positive dog training. We went through a little exercise at the door. Remember when you go to the door, first thing, jiggle it. And until the dog no longer responds, and then open it, and then jiggle the next door handle, or pop it open just a little bit, and then a little bit more, a little bit more. Remember, the dog can't go out the door first. We want to train the dog just because the door opens, don't have to let it out. If you remember in the very first video above, the Guardian grabbed, I believe it was Duke's collar, worried that he was going to run out the door. Well, we can actually use the third consequence to march directly towards the dog and teach them not to go on the tile and stay on the carpet when we answer the door. Remember, your authority is directional in front of you. So if I'm answering the door and I'm facing that way, my authority is pointing away from the dogs. So if I want to enforce the boundary there, I'm going to actually show you this real quick, if you can follow me a little bit. So if the dog is here, come here, buddy. Come here. A little bit further back so you can see it. So if he's already here, if I answer the door when he's here, he thinks I'm assisting him. So before I answer the door, I'm going to move him away just by getting in between him and the door. This is what I call reverse herding. Once he gets across the line, I stop. Now I move backwards one step at a time and I pause. Now he's out of eyesight right now. As soon as he crosses the line, I rush towards it. As soon as he gets across, he's on base. He sat down, I take a big step backwards anytime the dog sits down. Now this is actually something I didn't go over, but I'm going to show the Guardians right here. You could teach your dog not to respond to the door. So if the Beagles were in here, the Beagles would rush the door because this sound is associated with the door opening. So I want the dog to practice staying outside of this room without the presence of somebody here. Nobody's knocking, nobody's ringing the doorbell. It's just this isolated sound. So it is over and over. And if the dog starts to come forward, I stop at the line. When I take a step back and take one pause. Make it as noisy as possible. Go through each individual step of answering the door. Now again, when you have 3 dogs, it's easier if you do this with 1 dog at a time. So I put 2 dogs away, practice with 1 dog. Once that dog is consistently staying behind the line, put that dog away and practice. This might take multiple practice sessions. And eventually you bring your 2 best dogs together, then all 3 dogs, and then all the dogs, eventually what happens is somebody come to the door and your dogs would come right over, walk over here and be like, you gonna go answer that or what? You've trained them that I'm gonna handle the door. And security for the pack is one of the things that the leader dog does, or in this case, the leader humans. So by practicing this and showing the dog, I have this under control, the dog understands the humans aren't taking over the leadership position. This is what helps flip what I call the leader-follower dynamic. Dogs are all about what they see us do. They don't see us go to work and work our tail off. They just see us at home. They're like, man, he doesn't act like a leader. All right, let's go back to our original positions and we'll finish this up. I went through a structured feeding. I described it, but we didn't really go through it in as much detail. We ran out of time, actually, way over time. What I would like to do is basically, do we feed the dogs in here? Mm-hmm. Right now, just because you guys have so many things going on, I would just close this gate and then put the food down, put the food bowls in opposite corners of the room. I would feed the dogs based on the order of their rank. Now, in this case, it's probably going to be Snoopy, and then Duke, and then this guy, because he's the newest member of the pack. And that would help him challenge them a little bit less, because he's a puppy, he's going to do that. What I would do is also assign a command word to each dog using passive training. So if his word is feast, when he takes his first bite of food, we're going to say the word feast. When the other 2 dogs hear the word feast, there's no food in their mouth, so it doesn't have any context for them. The other dogs maybe say grub and chow. So when I hear grub, that means that my permission word to go eat, not the other 2 dogs. So for structured feeding, what I would do is put the food down, probably with the gate down, the dogs can see, And if their dogs are fighting out here, then do it separately. But I think the dogs will be okay because the distance will help them feel less intense. Put the food down in all the bowls, and then the human eats something first. It has to be solid. It can't be a liquid. Just grab a chip or a cracker, something 5 or more bites. And then we're going to come over and we're going to invite one dog to come and eat from that one bowl. And that first dog that comes in, Snoopy's bowl should be closest to this gate, so he's not passing other dogs' bowls. Now, when he goes to his bowl, he is only allowed to eat out of his bowl. And we're going to kind of close the gate so the other dogs can't get in there. And once he's done, we're going to escort him out the room, and then we're going to let the next dog in, which would be Duke. When Duke takes his first bite of food, we're going to say his command word. He gets to eat, all these dogs get to eat without the presence of the other dog. If I want to steal his food while he's eating, I'm just going to invade his personal space. Or if we feed all the dogs at the same time, they wolf it down so they can get to go invade the other dog's space and try to take their food. So by adding structure to mealtime, it really can help us assume more of a leadership role. I have a video for the structure feeding. If you have questions about doing this as well, let me know. Let me see, what else did we go over? The focus exercise, did I talk about that already? I don't think I talked about that, so I have a video. I think I did talk about it, but I have a video if you don't know how to do it. Yes, I talked about that in great detail. We also want to use the escalating consequences to disagree. Remember, first thing is hiss. Second thing is stand up abruptly and turn to face the dog. Keep pivoting until the dog is stationary. Stands, sits, lies down. When he does, take 2 steps back, left, right. Pause 1 second, then go back to doing what you're doing. The third consequence is to march directly at the dog until the dog turns sideways or greater. And as soon as it does, you stop. Then you go to the second consequence. You're pivoting until the dog's stationary. And you take those 2 steps back. You pause 1 second. Remember, pause 1 second is your period. And then you go back to doing what you're doing. The only time that doesn't apply is if the dog's in a designated no-dog zone. So if the dog is not allowed to be somewhere and they turn sideways, you keep on walking into them until they get past the boundary. If they try to go around you this way, take a step this way, block them, and keep moving them away. I call it reverse herding. It's what I did over there at the door to move the dog away. And the third consequence, we're going to march towards the dog until it turns sideways, unless it's in a designated no-dog zone. Then we're going to kind of move the dog out, and then we go, and that's how we establish and enforce an invisible boundary. The fourth consequence I have is actually putting the dog on a leash timeout. I put it on a leash, and I step on the leash as far away from I step away on the leash as far away from the collar as the collar is from the dog's tail, not the tip, the front, the butt. And so maybe about 3 feet away. The dog throws a temper tantrum. I don't say anything. I wait for the dog to sit. I do not tell it to sit. When it sits, I slide my foot with the leash towards the dog to take the tension off, and I'm waiting for the dog to lay down. When the dog lays down and it's calm, then I take my foot off the leash. Now it's free, but it's going to drag the leash around, which is dangerous unsupervised, so it should only be done supervised. If a minute goes by and he tries to go after the other dog or do the wrong thing again, as he runs by, I step on the leash, reapply the consequence. Or if a couple minutes go by, I take it off. It's not a quid pro quo. Now this is 4 that you're going to do in a row. At first you're going to have to hiss, then you have to stand up, then you're going to have to march, then you have to leash time out. After a while it'll be hiss, stand, march. Then it'll just be hiss, stand, then eventually it'll just be hiss. If you're consistent, you'll get down to it. Remember, the hiss is best used before the dog does the wrong thing, and only once per incident, and so it should sound like, sorry buddy, just a demo. And don't go or little ones. And I also use a kissing sound as my affirmation. Now to get the dog to come to me, I'm going to hold my hand out flat. I'm going to pantomime, pretend like I'm putting a treat in there. I'm going to see if I can entice him off the couch. When he comes to me, I raise it over his head to put him in a sit, pet him under his chin, and say sit. One thing that he's doing is he's putting his paw on me. So if I reach to pet him, he pulls his paw up, then I pull my arm back. As soon as he does that. And eventually you'll teach him to keep 4 on the floor. And I would not practice the shake for a while. So a member of the family taught the shake, which is awesome that she's teaching the dog. But if you like this, you must really like this, is how dogs think. So maybe try to find some other tricks or commands we could teach. Now, I also went over the jumping thing. So what we do is if somebody's coming home, we're going to call or text whoever's home. That person's going to put the other 2 dogs away. We're going to put him on a leash. We're going to step on the leash about 3 feet away from him. So let's say the leash only goes to here. I'm going to stand right here outside of the dog's reach and turn sideways to the dog. I'm not going to give the dog any direction. Dog's all excited, jumping up, and super happy to see you and excited, but that's unbalanced excited. As soon as the dog calms down, then I turn to face the dog, and I slowly go under, and I try to reach under the chin and pet him. As soon as the dog gets up, I step back outside the reach and turn sideways. And again, I'm not giving any commands to the dog. I want the dog to learn the behavior that we want on its own rather than micromanaging the dog, which I think there was a lot of that going on in this house. So as soon as the dog sits and is calm, the humans approach and pet. As soon as I jump up or get excited, the humans move away. And if we do that with enough repetitions, eventually the dog will start sitting and offering a sit, manding, and being calm when you come home, because we've taught him this is the behavior I expect from you when I come home. Let me see, what else? The Guardians, like I said, we're using a lot of command words, so consolidate that, come up with a list of command words, maybe say vocabulary. Vocabulary means you're using a version of the word. You're saying come here instead of come. Also try to avoid saying good boy, instead saying just the command word. The dog sits, pet it and say sit. If it lays down, pet it and say crash, or whatever the words are. The more we use the appropriate command word and not okay or good sit, just sit, it's easier for the dog to understand. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I'm leaving out? We went on a walk. Remember to use the martingale collar the way that I showed, which was fine, but get a 4-foot straight leash with no loops, and make sure that we're, okay, we'll do a couple things on the walk. So I went through the structured, I think that's what the video, we went through the 5 rules for walks, so watch that one. But when we're walking them, I'd like to walk the dogs one at a time with the martingale. That we were trying to use a splitter, and you can't use the martingale special twist of the leash with a splitter. Because you correct one dog, you're correcting both, and they're both, and if you pull on one, the other one's going to kind of anchor it. So I'd like to assign each dog a side like I did in the mentioned in the video. Now the other thing is I'd like the Guardians to have a handful of treats with them, and no garlic in the treats. And what I'd like them to do is walk the dog separately, one at a time, and every 5 steps maximum for a couple. We don't have to do this for every walk, but maybe for the first part of the walk to the end of the block, we're going to take 1 step, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and the dog never knows how many. Handler's choice. And as soon as I take 3 steps, I stop until the dog is sit. As soon as it sits, I'm going to give it the treat. Make sure the treat is next to me or behind me, not in front of me. That's going to cause the dog to come in front of us. And what we want to do is we want the dog eventually to be walking, like checking us out every couple of feet to see if we're going to stop and give him another treat. So if every time we go from here to the end of the block, they're doing that, they get more interested in focusing on us as opposed to their surroundings. Now the caveat to that is Snoopy starts barking and howling once he gets to the fire hydrant all the way to the house. He wasn't doing it until we stopped to give him a treat. So I would maybe try to not do that with him on the way from the fire hydrant to the house. If it's safe to do so, when he starts howling, another thing you might want to do is, the focus exercise would be great, but another thing you might want to do is jog. When dog is jogging, okay, I can't howl, I got to pay attention to what's going on. So again, other ways of kind of redirecting or direct the dog's attention from being a nuisance. Now, I'm probably forgetting some things that we went over in the session. That's okay. I want you to call me or text me if you have any questions. You'll be watching these videos on my website a couple days after the session. But if you have questions, I want you to text me. Make sure you text me a picture of your dogs and what's going on. If you call me, it's going to be slower. If you email me, it'll take me about a week to get back to you. I want you to call me. I don't care if it's 7 years after the session. I want you to think I'm your personal consultant when it comes to dog behavior. Okay, Bagel. He's like, I'm exhausted. This has been a lot of work for a puppy. Remember, for training, to keep the training sessions about like 1 minute maximum, 1.5 minutes maximum, I guess would be. But the shorter the better, and always end on a good one. Okay, this is Bagel. Duke and Snoopy are back in the bedroom. We're going to release them here in a minute, but this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you do.